What drives you, Exile? Is it justice? Revenge? Honor? No. It is power.
Nice boss. There you go.
This is no longer enjoyable.
What is up, you guys? Kogi here again, this time showing you one of my other League starters that I made for the Ritual League. Now, this is actually the League starter that I chose to play the Ritual League. It has been an absolute blast and has been face rolling all the content. But in the meantime, I also learned a lot of really cool things, and I want to show you guys how cool they are and how broken they can be, and it's none other than my Elementalist Divine IRE Ignite build. Now, you see, Divine IRE is a spell that basically converts a little bit of physical damage to lightning, and then the rest stays physical. I've always wanted to make this an Ignite build because it has that 70% ailment more damage basically per stage, and it can go up to 20 stages, making it very, very good to scaling Ignite damage. The only issue was that it's very hard to get Divine IRE to Ignite without going full-blown, you know, conversion with Avatar of the Fire, which then messes up your elemental equilibrium because now your other spells are doing fire damage, right? Or you would have to just go out there and abuse a Stormfire, but that's a level 80, and I hate using that damn ring because you can't level the freaking thing. Ran over because I did play Discharge, so you guys know how I feel. Elementalist is kind of like an end-all be-all solve for these type of things, because that means every single damage type can ignite, and this is where things get very, very broken really quick with how crazy that node can be. And it didn't freaking click to me because I knew this information, it just was right under my nose. So with that, guys, let's go right into the character and showcase some things and explain why it's so broken and why is it so good. Let's get right to it. Before we continue, if you guys enjoy what you're about to see, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, as it helps me out immensely with the YouTube algorithm. On top of that, if you guys want to see how these builds are made, you can follow me over at my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Kogares. The link is down below. As well as that, if you guys have any questions or concerns, you can go ahead and ask them in the YouTube comments down below, or just go ahead and join my Discord community and I can answer you when possible, you know, to any question you guys may have about any other build that I have made. And with that, guys, with no other further delays, let's continue. Welcome back, guys, and if you guys are wondering what little cube bubble in front of you is, that is my Elementalist Divine IRE Ignite build, or character, I guess I can say. And the little Aegis around you, it is the elemental Aegis that you get from her Ascendancy point that gives you an absorption shield based on how many notables you have on the tree. You guys can see here I have 32 notables, so thus I block, or I guess absorb, 3200 elemental damage. This goes in line very well with the rest of the defenses I have for the build, and I'll go over that very quickly later, as it's very simple but also very effective. What I really want to focus on here is because I will be making another build guide, a more extensive build guide, you know, with all the cool flashy editing and things like that. But I really want to go over Shaper of Flames and why it's so busted, especially for a skill like Divine IRE. Now, the first thing I want to note is that Divine IRE is a physical gem that gets converted, half of it, 50% of it, to lightning. Now, because the Shaper of Flames specifically dictates that all damage can ignite, you don't really even have to convert the phys damage to another element, as the physical damage can also ignite, which is really weird in my head. But that's how it works. Now, people sometimes leave it like this without even converting, because that means they can take advantage of the lightning damage. So when they hit with Divine IRE, it automatically procs elemental equilibrium, thus reducing their other resistances, i.e. cold and fire res, by -50, which is great. But here's the downside when you go a route like that. If you don't do this, you lose out on 25% more damage, because it specifically dictates here that if your highest damage type with the hit that apply the ignite is fire, you get 25% more damage, i.e. in English, I guess you can say, if when you hit the enemies in my Divine IRE, if its highest damage type, if you go here to the tooltip, is fire, as you can see it is, I do majority fire, that ignite that is applied from that hit will do 25% more damage than if you basically had other elements that do more damage, which is great. Now, you're probably wondering, why would you want fire damage if I have elemental equilibrium here? Isn't it going to basically increase the res? And yes, you're right. But here's the thing about Ignite, which, just in case you don't know, once you apply an Ignite, and I guess in my case, it will raise their fire res, I can easily override it with another skill that only does cold and or lightning, thus overriding that primary or affliction of elemental equilibrium, thus reducing the res. It's rewritable, and you can do it instantaneously with another spell, as long as you don't hit again with Divine Ire, which you shouldn't be doing because Ignite has a long duration. So basically what you have to do is just hit with your Divine Ire once, apply another spell, and then just watch the guy burn. And it gets really crazy with the minus res when you do Wave of Conviction, since it does primarily fire damage. It will lower the res by minus 25 exposure, and this will give another 25 minus res. So basically, Wave of Conviction actually lowers the res by minus 50. So between this and that, it's actually minus 100 fire res, not including, you know, Cooked Alive. There's 2 of them, that's minus 20, and Flammability, and I'm not going to even go into the cursed effectiveness. It's absolutely insane what you can pull off of this, and the way that I got conversion simply is with Magmatic Strikes, and it's good because you get, you know, Arsonist here for more damage. And over here, Divine Fury. Divine Fury doesn't actually convert anything because Divine Ire is not a fizz spell, but I did go for Divine Rav. And this is where I get into my other portion of how broken this mechanic can be. Now, here's what I want you to realize. Back then, Ignite used to double dip. I'm not going to go over to what that means, but basically it just meant that you can get a lot of damage. And the reason why that worked that way is because, let's say you built area damage. The area damage will affect the initial hit and also affect the Ignite. Because it affected the initial hit, the Ignite got boosted, and because it also affects the Ignite also got boosted again. So it was like a double dip portion, I guess you can say. That was nerfed a while back, basically with all the other elements, because all the elements were basically busted. What it does now is that the actual Ignite DPS is based off the base damage of your hits before the increase in the more multipliers. So your goal really is to increase the base damage of that Ignite, essentially. That's why Discharge is so busted when you have so many charges, because it has such an insane amount of flat damage. And this is where Elementalist gets stupid. I knew about this. If you guys didn't know, the gain 5% of physical damage as any other freaking thing, let's say Chaos, Fire, whatever the case may be, is considered base damage. So what that means is that I get 5% on my physical damage since I'm using Divine Ire. It is Fizz, unlike Discharge. That's why Divine Ire is so freaking good. That 5% extra that I get is added as base damage, which affects my Ignite. And what makes this really stupid is that Chaos damage can also Ignite, which means you can then abuse things like an Adziri's Promise or a Sin's Rebirth. A Sin's Rebirth gives you literally Unholy Might, which makes 30% of your physical as extra Chaos. That extra Chaos, since it can Ignite, is added to your base Ignite. And the ridiculous number you can get from this in PoB is it's stupid. This one flask gives me 5 million damage per Ignite over the duration and 600,000 Ignite DPS for a 21% increase in damage. Meanwhile, at Adziri's Promise, because it's physical as extra Chaos and elemental as extra Chaos, and Divine Ire takes advantage of both of them, right? Because it is both converted to fire and it's a physical gem. It gives me 24%. And this actually blew my mind because I was putting Cinder Swallow here initially because it is an Ignite flask. You know, you do more damage when you Ignite. But it was only giving me a 7% damage bonus. While these very, very cheap, I bought this for like 20C. And at Adziri's Promise, I bought a max roll for around 12 Chaos. Gives me a 40% damage boost. And it's insane. Like, it's just stupid. Because all that extra damage is added to the base damage of the Ignite, thus giving you stupid damage. You can see here my Ignite went from 2.8 with Cinder Swallow, like 3 point something, to easily over 4 million, rivaling my Discharge build. It's absolutely ridiculous the amount of damage they can pull off, and it's just amazing the amount you can do here. Now, in comparison to my full tree, right, I'm still missing things like I don't have a Divine Datum yet, so I do have these 5 points allocated to Eldritch Battery. It also means that I'm still missing 2 auras. I'm still missing Summon Skitterbots for the 50% increased damage taken. And again, also, I'm still missing Aspect of Spider for another 15% increased damage taken. That's what I'm missing. Right now, I'm just using a Vitality just for some region and things like that. But that's pretty much what happens when you start abusing the extra Fizz. And you can take this even a further step by using an Essence of Hysteria. It's basically just one of those, you know, corrupted essences. You can get rings like this. I got really lucky with this ring, by the way. And it guarantees to gain 10% of physical damage as extra fire. Now, this won't affect other spells, like, for example, aka I have Stormbrand and, you know, Orb of Storms. They're primarily lightning, so the extra Fizz doesn't matter, right? For your elemental equilibrium is what I'm trying to say. This one node. See, I have this ring right here. I bought this ring with also essences. I bought the base for like 3 Chaos and slammed like a few essences with Scour and that. I think I spent like 10C on the essences. And I got a massive ring here. It rivals basically the synthesized ring, the circle of, I forget the fire one, anguish, I'm assuming. And it gives 50% fire damage. Now, out of these two, what do you think does the more damage? The 50% increased fire damage, or the 24 on top and the 10% extra physical? Lo and behold, the 10% physical is insanely stronger. You guys can see here, I have 19,000. If I remove this one, it goes down to 18,400. But if I remove this one, it goes down to 17,700, meaning I roughly maybe like almost 1,000. This one was over 2k or some number like that. It was like basically 2k. 1,900 to be exact. It is ridiculous the amount of damage extra phys modifiers are for a divine IRE elementalist, and you can abuse this. Now, that's pretty much the scenario that we're facing here, and I didn't notice about a few days ago how crazy this can be. And my damage was already at 3 million without the abusiveness, but either way, let's go into basically my tree real quick and what I'm trying to use for defenses. Now, the build is supposed to be using a Vulgar with a gain 10% of his maximum life as extra energy shield mod. You can get this from a Veiled mod. I have gone to Global Weight 20 and I made this Kuri Scepter with a trigger. And the guy stole my freaking weapon. And luckily I had a chat. He ignored me, obviously. So he went there and bought the item because he listed it up for like 5 chaos when the thing was worth like easily 30c. I don't know why he put it up for cheap. But he basically took my currency and my crafting fee. He wanted more. I wasn't going to fall for it because he basically said that the craft cost was like 10 chaos. I know it's only 3c. I'm not stupid. He ended up ignoring me and then took my item. My stream, luckily, got it back from me and I paid him, you know, the money that he spent. And luckily, we have a nice little, you know, scepter here with +1. And I have the trigger. So basically, I'm scared to do the same with my 6-link Vulgar. We'll see what happens. So basically, I need to go to Global 820 and try to get the maximum energy shield. And what this does is it move my energy shield from where it is now 1,000 to 1,900. The reason why it's so good, because that means I can combine it with Mind Over Matter, giving me basically another 1,700 life as mana. And how would I sustain this? Simply because of this one node, which I don't have a Thread of Hope yet. If you guys look at my POB, I have a Thread of Hope here, which then gets this one little Spell Leech node, which should be more than enough to give me a lot of, you know, energy recharge. And I do have the ES regen Veilcraft. I'm gonna mess around more of it as I learn about the build more once I function it to see if it's good enough. But that's the gist of what I'm trying to do. And the reason why I'm trying to do this is because the build has 5.3k life, 1,900 energy shield with Mind Over Matter, so it's like basically extra life. It's using a level 20 steel skin, which is over 2,000 buff damage, and it's using an elemental aegis for another 3,200. And on top of that, I have a frost shield here to reduce the damage taken, since I do have energy shield on a boss fight. That's a lot of effective HP, guys. So that's pretty much where the source of my defenses go. And obviously, I'll be clarifying how good it is in the crazy build guide. That's pretty much that. The rest of the tree is basically your generic, you know, get elemental equilibrium, get elemental overload, you know, get as much fire damage as possible. Here's some conversion, right? Get some life. Simple as that. I have a Thread of Hope for this amazing, you know, socket for Light Eater, Breath of Flames. I get Snow Forge. And if I do need, you know, strength and dexterity, I can pick up practical applications. And then, of course, your almighty Cluster Jewel for Ignite builds. You want to get Burning Bright and Distorting Splay for Blind, which is quite nice. And you basically want Cooked Alive, Blowback. And I put the same thing here, but what I have learned is that since we're using Energy Shield, we don't have any Fizz. You're done yet? Okay. We don't have any Fizz mitigation. And the issue with that is that we get absolutely destroyed from Porcupines. The way I offset that was with a Granite Flask, but now that we're getting this insane damage flask, I had to find another way to overcome the almighty Porcupine that loves to impale my butt. And the way we get over this is easily with Cremator. Because the way you get over Porcupines is if you destroy the corpse, the Porcupine cannot explode. And this is good because it says enemies you hit or destroy don't kill. So if you see a Porcupine pack, literally stand in the middle of it and hit it with your big AoE, essentially this thing, because that charges up. That will hit everybody in that pack and they'll all explode. What was great about this is that the Ignite Proliferation happens even, you know, the Ignite Proliferation is one of the support gems, which spreads my Ignite right here. Right, spreads my Ignite over a 20 unit radius. I don't have to be dead. So if I apply an Ignite, it would instantly spread. And that's really good because that means that anything that appears still gets the Ignite from the proliferation. Because I can hit one enemy. If that enemy dies, that's fine. But anything that did not get hit from the initial spread will still keep spreading, which is very, very good for the build. And that's really not affecting me at all. So I'm going to be swapping one of these blowbacks with a cremator just for the sake of that, and that basically solved any issues I have with defenses and especially the almighty porcupine, right? So other than that, let's go into a quick map to showcase how the build functions right now so you guys can see how fun it is, and then we'll go over the gear and the little details and a little mini build guide. And I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get right to it. Now, for the map that we're going to be using is a Cold River map. It's one of the new map types. This is actually my first red tier map because unfortunately I am a little bit behind. I'm only working on level 2 because unfortunately I do have a job. But yeah, as a streamer, whenever I get online, I try to get as fast as possible and try to catch up to everybody who plays full time, things like that. But just know that there's still a lot of room to grow in the build, so don't worry about the damage right now. It's amazing right now, but it's definitely going to keep going as well with the Awakener level, so I am not worried one bit about that. So let's run this first tier red map, and hopefully I don't die. It is corrupted. It's like decent, 80% impact size. If you're looking for the portal on this, don't ask me how much money I spent on the boxes. That's all you gotta know, right? So just so you guys know, since you guys are wondering, how do I reapply the other elemental equilibrium to where it goes minus 50 fire instead of getting a positive fire through the divine iron? So what we use is actually a Stormbrand linked to combustion, since all damage ignites using Elementalist. Even Stormbrand, who does only lightning damage, will also ignite, thus applying the minus 50 for elemental equilibrium, and it will also do another minus 19 because of combustion. You also have a Wave of Conviction here just straight for bossing, and yes, I understand that it hits for fire damage, but it only hits once, so the Stormbrand, which hits multiple times, will override it easily. There's another minus 25, but because of Elementalist, it does minus 50. So it's actually this and that is like, what, minus 69 res. Nice. And then added elemental equilibrium and all the other things. It's stupid the amount of minus res we have in this build. On top of that, we have a castle damage taken Tempest Shield, so when we block, it shoots out a little arc from our shield, which does do lightning damage, and that will again proc elemental equilibrium. And on top of all that, we do have a Orb of Storms linked with Curse on Hit, Flammability, and increased crit to proc elemental overload more often, to do EE, and to curse Flammability. So we have a lot of support. So I don't know this map. I guess we'll do a quick alpha, just so you guys can see a little alpha.
Let's go.
But what's cool about this build is that you can literally beam from a mile away and just like absolutely just melt everything. Let's go. We do have Seance, which is the what do you call it? Which is the ghosted monsters, which can be very rippy in high tier maps, unfortunately. But I'm not too worried about it. Alright. Now the only downside that Divine IRE really has is the fact that you have to charge up your stages. Unlike Discharge, you can just blow everything up in one shot. But you know, either way, it's quite nice. And it's perfectly fine, as with enough cast speed, you can charge up very, very quickly. And the more monsters on the screen, the better. We'll pick up all that stuff later. I'm going to show you guys that. Why am I so cold? Yo, I actually get frozen here? What the... Man, if you ever needed a freeze flask, you definitely need one now. Oh, good. We have a little Legion here, so you can see the Prolist in action. If you're running with the explosions for the Herald of Ashes, it's actually my my Herald effect from the new box. Again, don't ask how much I spent. I forgot to mention, we are using Herald of Ash, which gives me a lot of fire damage, and it gives me, of course, a lot of extra physicals, extra fire, which affects my base damage of my Ignite. That's why it's absolutely amazing. And my build can use it, unlike other people who are trying to just stick to one specific element. Right? So you can see that the Stormbrand is popping everywhere, no matter where we are. Over Storms as well, the Tempest Shield. So we're constantly having Elemental Equilibrium hit up with minus fire. Right? And we always have Elemental Overload up, which is absolutely fantastic. You know, I like keeping those things stable, and the more automated I can get that, the better. A lot of loot here, but I'll pick it up later. It is my first tier red map, you know. So, let's do this very quickly. I have no idea what the boss fight is going to look like, but that was such an easy ritual. What in the world? Alright. So, let's keep going. So, yeah, one thing to note is that I'm also... Whoa. I'm still missing my mind over matter. So, I do have like less than 2,000... not less than... I have 2,000 less HP than I should have. So if I'm taking big hits, just know that I'm trying still. Still missing a lot of gear here. Right? And I haven't really spent that much money because, of course, I play less than other streamers. So the amount of money I've invested is primarily mostly on crafting. Everything else is basically so found with Harvest or, you know, I purchased it with essences and base types and crafted it. And I think the only thing I really bought was the amulet, which was a cheap talisman that I bought for 5C. Talismans are a great way to get a very solid amulets with an anointment early on in the game for very cheap. Which again, you would then change on later out, right? This is a very pretty map, I gotta say. There's a lot of gaps in this map, surprisingly. It's a lot bigger than I would expect. Where the hell is these buzz fight? Is it this thing? Is it here? Wait, we have double boss. Ooh, shit. Did I just teleport? I'm not gonna question why I teleported. This is not what I signed up for. This is not what I signed up for. Does that have a shield? It's probably not the best map to showcase. Please. Yeah, there seems to be immune. I don't even know it. I was gonna full charge here. And they should die here. There you go. Oh, I can see why CMH died in this fight. This is no joke. Yeah, let's move on. Now, that map was a little bit rough simply because the way that Divine IRE works, you have to charge all of your stages in order to get the max amount of DPS required. Granted, I'm still missing a lot of the things like the defenses from Mind Over Matter and Ideal Jewels, and of course my Thread of Hope and things like that. But so far, I don't think that was bad. Our damage is perfectly fine where it is right now. It's just that I need more defenses from the Mind Over Matter. I'm hoping that's going to be the little edge that I need to be completely safe with a build and that. So with that, the first thing we're going to touch is the early game tree, which is around level 40. In this scenario, at the beginning, you're going to be picking up these little nodes up here on the left. Do not pick up the spell damage because it does not affect Ignite. Keep that in mind. Please do not pick this up. The only time you should be picking this up is basically like at the beginning of the freaking game when you're running the map like Act 1, right? That is it, because you're going to be using spell damage at that point, not Ignite. But once you start basically doing Ignite using Firestorm and things like that, I'll explain the leveling now. Then you want to drop these because they do nothing for the Ignite, right? That's why it's better to go left as it's more cost efficient. You want to get Firewalker, you want to get, you know, the life and mana. You get Arcane Wood for the mana regen, quick recovery from our life and mana regen. As for Elemental Equilibrium, do not pick this up until you basically get Orb of Storms and then you start igniting using Firestorm or Fireball, or you start using Flame Wall. I believe Firestorm and Fireball are going to be your first bet, and I believe Firestorm is going to be the better alternative. Right? And with that, you would really want to rush for Elemental Overload, because at Act 1, you do get increased crit with Orb of Storms, and that allows you to crit very easily and thus get 40% more elemental damage. Right? We do have Explosive Impact for more fire damage and AoE, anything with Holy Fire, Purity of Life for more life, right? Divine Judgment for even more damage. We do come down here as well to get some spell cast speed, damage, life, and res, and more damage. Let's get a chance to Ignite, which is not going to really matter since you're an Elementalist anyways. I'll go over her Ascendancy real quick. More life, and then here is around level 35, and Act 3 is when you should be getting your Divine IRE. It's a level 28 gem, and you get it from killing the Gravicious, which is basically it's the area where you go up the stairs that leads to the Lunaris Temple. I forget the name of the area. And there there'll be General Gravicious. You kill him, and then the lady in the town will give you your Divine IRE gem. And this is when you want to allocate these two nodes. That way it does majority fire damage. You just get Arsonist for more fire damage. The reason why you want that, again, is because the first thing you're going to pick up in Act 3 as your Ascendancy is Shaper of Flames. This allows everything to ignite, so you don't have to worry about Ignite chance. And any damage type can ignite. So no matter what your Divine IRE hits with, can be Chaos, Physical, Cold, Lightning, who knows, right? It can ignite, which is great. From that point on, you're basically an Ignite build, which is really, really good. Now for leveling, I did say you're going to be using Firestorm, Fireball. If you do use Fireball, you can use LMP, right? But unfortunately, you can't use Chain, Fork, or any of that till later. So I guess your best bet is going to be LMP and Pierce. And you want to link this with Combustion just for the increased chance to ignite. With that, I believe Firestorm or Fireball, has its own chance to ignite as well. So it should be more than enough to ignite most bosses to death. And that's what you're going to be using to level with until you get Firestorm, and then eventually Flame Wall until Divine IRE, things like that. Right? Moving on to your medium tree, this is where you basically level 75. This is basically, if you have all your gear, you want to basically just run right into maps already. with all your gear set up, as the only thing really you're missing from the end game tree is just the cluster jewels. And here we added, the life nodes up here. We do have a Thread of Hope, giving us Breath of Flames for a lot more damage, right? Light Eater just for spell leech, and maximum damage while you're in full energy shield, which is great when you're an Eldritch Battery build right now. Right, we do get Snowforge, and since we're an Eldritch Battery build, meaning that you read here, we spend energy shield instead of mana. So basically, when we cast a spell, our mana is actually our energy shield. Basically, we get our mana from our gear, and we leech that back with Light Eater, essentially is what that meaning. And when we're full mana, we basically get 24% increased damage, which is great for 1 point. You can also take up Utmost Intellect for an extra 125 energy shield just from the straight up intelligence and gain. It's not really that big of a deal, but if you don't feel like you have enough energy shield for your Mind Over Matter, then yeah. And this is also, like I said, we're going to pick up Mind Over Matter from our Eldritch Battery. So now that extra 2000 energy shield that's helping, or I guess like it's being used as mana, with Mind Over Matter, it becomes also a part of our life, which is an absolute beauty of a kind of synergy. The only downside to this is that you have to worry about Chaos Res, because Chaos Res will ignore all that energy shield. That's why we do have a positive Chaos Res in this build between the Adziri's Promise and all the Chaos Res in the gear. Even in my current character, I do have 1% positive Chaos Res without the Adziri's Promise. Once I do pop it, I'm already at positive like 45, 50, which is great. Right? We do pick up Constitution for more life. On top of that, we pick up all the other divines, because at this point we're using Divine IRE, all the fucking beautiful divines names, I guess. And you're taking advantage of that extra juicy physical as extra fire, physical as extra lightning, and all that stuff, right? On top of that, we do have a reduced mana reservation node here, just to fit all our auras in. I'll go over that when we go over the skill gems. You need that one node to fit just a little bit more, And that's pretty much that. Nothing's really changed in that. We do have a cluster, a jewel here, basically just maximum life, burning damage, and damage. You can get damage over time and fire damage, but again, because of Righteous Fire and the new Elementalist, it's kind of expensive, so you can just stick with burning damage and life, like a 2-prop, right? Or any res if you so need it. Now, when you move on to the end game tree, right? Actually, very quickly, back to the mid game tree. After this point, you're basically going for Mastermind and Discord for the extra minus 25 res, and Heart of Destruction for the AoE and the 30% more damage. Going for end game tree, all already changes is we're picking up the cluster jewels. You want to get, or make sure that you get a fire cluster jewel, large one with 8 passive only, because you don't want to waste points here. And you want Burning Bright for the AoE and damage over time. And you want Distorting Display for the blind, which is really good. As for your medium jewels, again, try to get eye level 75. That way you make sure that you have every single mod in the pool. Do not get above level 84 though, because then you start getting a lot of the other like Chaos Res modifiers that go into the pool of the really high tier, and that kind of dilutes the pool, makes it hard for you to roll the mods that you want. And at this point, you basically want Cooked Alive, Blowback, and at this point you want Cremator, at least one of them, like I said before, to kill the porcupines, and either a Cooked Alive or a Blowback, whichever one you get. Blowback is better for DPS. Cooked Alive is just overall a nice node for just damage over its duration. They're both okay, but Blowback is the highest DPS if you care about that. And again, the jewels are the same thing: maximum light, burning damage, fire damage, damage over time, things like that. And that's pretty much the only thing that happens in the end game, right? If you do have a cluster jewel before you get, your Thread of Hope, go ahead and use the cluster jewel. If you get Thread of Hope before the cluster jewel, then get that. Move on to our gear real quick. Now, what you want to be using for a weapon is either a scepter that has elemental damage, or the only wand you could be using is a profane wand, because it gives you cast speed, since spell damage does not affect the ignite. Myself, I have a scepter, and what you're really looking for is fire damage over time multiplier, burning damage, and or fire damage. Ideally a +1 to fizz or a +1 to lightning skill gems. And then if you have it open, I believe it is a suffix. Let me check real quick. It is indeed a suffix modifier in order to craft trigger, so that way you can trigger those spells that I mentioned earlier, and we'll go over them again here. Right, for your shield, you want basically energy shield, life, +1 to physical or lightning, and whatever res you need. Right, this is only, you want energy shield just for the sake of Eldritch Battery, right? Your Devouring Datum, basically the only unique that is just a luxury really, since you can just allocate the 5 points in the tree. So if you don't have a Devouring Datum giving you Eldritch Battery, you can just do what I did and just go through here and pick up the Eldritch Battery manually with 5 points. It's a nice thing about leveling, because most people won't have the Thread of Hope or the Cluster Jewel, so those points will instead go for Eldritch Battery, right? That's what I did anyway. And basically, that is a very solid helmet, because you get +1 And the plus one's good because you're putting all your auras in here, because it says socketed gems have 20% reduced mana reservation. Here's where we're putting, you know, our Malevolence, our Summon Skitter Bots, our Herald of Ash with an Enlightened, and then allows us to then fit aspect of the spider using that 4% node here that we got. Just that little itty bitty more that we needed. Solid helmet, and you want increased duration of elements you inflict while focus. It makes it doesn't affect the damage of the ignite in its DPS, like the DPS doesn't change, but over its duration, since the duration is longer, the ignite overall is going to do more damage. So keep that in mind. It's not a DPS bonus, it's just a ignite bonus, right? And then for your chest piece, what you ideally want is a Vol Regalia with life, maximum life, whatever res, and ideally, please get an open prefix. You can gain 10% of maximum life at extra maximum energy shield for the extra 1000 energy shield it gives you for your Elder Battery Mind Over Matter combo. This is a Veiled mod. It doesn't cost a lot. It's like 4 chaos to craft. It's just rare. I don't have one yet, obviously. Now, the way you can get the maximum life and mod is either getting a hunter. So you can do what I did and buy, you know, what I did was I bought a 6-link Vol Regalia using the ethereal cards, which had cost me like 65 chaos to get all 8. It gives you an eye level 80 chest piece, and it's already 6 links, so I'll deal with that. And then I just slammed it with a Deafening Essence of Greed. I believe I have one, so I can show you what they look like. And what's good about these essences, I love essences.
And not before.
They guarantee that, oh, I have this one, but you see, like, they guarantee such a high tier of this. So this will give you cold res for the Essence of Greed. This one gives me 99 life, 99. This will give you basically 100 to 110 or 109. The last one gives you like basically 120. It's crazy. And they're going for like 5 to 60 a pop. When I bought them, I'm not quite sure right now, but they're absolutely amazing to get that guaranteed roll. The only way you can do this is if you get a hunter chest piece, right, and you get the maximum life roll, or you get it from the Vault Temple. Vault Temples, you can find a really good Vol Regalia like this with the maximum life over 100 and increased maximum life roll and good res with open prefix, probably for like 10 to 15 chaos, maybe 20 or 30. The only issue is it's not 6-linked. So that's your options, right? You either get it from the temple and craft it yourself, you know, add the Veiled mod, and then 6-link it yourself, or you get the divination cards like I did, and then you buy the Hunter's Exalted Orb to make it a hunter item so you can get the maximum life. That is your only 2 roll options here. You know, just get what you need. Even without the 10% maximum life, you're still going to be above 5k. So don't worry too much about that. Right, moving on from that. Your gloves, you basically just want energy shield, life, and res. I got really lucky. Some really nice, like, ES gloves, 150 ES with 70 life. Very, very solid. But you don't need that much energy shield. Over 100 is more than enough with life and res. Boots, life, res, movement speed. Get a little bit of energy shield if you can. What was that? Your amulet, you basically want as much dexterity as you need, because dexterity was a little bit of annoyance. Fire damage, cast speed, and life. The fire damage is what you really want to focus on. Any stats you need, obviously. And then this is a good spot to put a open suffix to craft aspect of the spider. You need Venomous First of the Night Bestiary. I put the link down below if you guys want to buy it. I know some people are confused about that item. You then buy the item from the person, go to the menagerie, click it, it adds the recipe, and then you can craft it on any rare piece of gear that has an open suffix. Simple as that. Right. As for your rings, you ideally want open rings for the elemental damage, and you either want to use essences of anger or essences of hysteria to get the 10% physical extra fire. The anger gives you fire damage guaranteed. And you want to basically alch and scour, not alch and scour, basically scour and essence until you get like something like this is really good with res and damage and craft life. Or if you get life, you just craft the extra res. I got really lucky with these 2 rings, honestly. It barely took me any tries. So if anything, just for leveling, just buy life and res gear, and that's pretty much it. If you get a little bit of fire damage, it's just a plus. For your belt, you want a Stygian Vise of life and res, and then you can craft the bench for like cheap, maybe like a few alchs, I think it's 2 or 4. 12 to 13% increased damage. That's pretty much it. For your Abyssal Jewel, you basically just want maximum life and damage over time while holding a shield. Your flask, you want a silver flask with freeze immunity, and try to get reduced charges used above 23%. That way you can use the silver flask twice instead of just once. You could use a Cinder Swallow if you have the money, but you're missing an immunity, and I don't recommend that. Because Sin's Rebirth and Azeri's Promise, which are the other 2 cheap flasks, give you way too much damage to ignore. So highly recommend buy Sin's Rebirth, pretty cheap flask, and Azeri's Promise, pretty dirt cheap. Try to get the highest roll possible. Quicksilver with movement speed and extra charges. And then whatever life flask you feel comfortable using an instant or a saturated or bubbling, like the half with immunity to bleed. Right. As I already went over the cluster jewels with you guys, it is the same as always. and then of course the turtle foam. That's basically all the jewels. Now for your skills, like I said, the trigger one's gonna have With Conviction, Combustion, Stormbrand. This to reduce their exposure, and that whole, you know, another minus 25 with Elementalist, Combustion, and Stormbrand. That way they reduce by another 19, and Stormbrand helps you keep up elemental equilibrium. For your boots, you want Dash, Second Wind, and Steel Skin, and then Frost Shield. You saw me use Flame Dash instead because I had an issue with Dexterity. So if you have the same issue with Dexterity as me, go ahead and just swap this to Flame Dash. That's pretty much what I'm using, so I'll save it. I prefer Flame Dash in this scenario because Dashes has way too much of a Dex requirement, and I can't afford it. So go ahead and put Flame Dash or Dash, Second Wind, Steel Skin on walk. Keep in mind on my walk.
Hello.
Whenever I walk, I have it.
Not before.
So make it as high as possible, and then a Frost Shield. Your gloves, Orb of Storms, Curse on Hit, Flammability, or Hex Touch, whatever. Increase crit to hold up your Elemental Overload and to curse. Your chest piece is going to be Divine Ire, Deadly Elements, Burning Damage, Unbound Elements, Ignite Proliferation, and Infused Channeling. Infused Channeling gives you generic damage, which is good because it affects everything, Poison, Ignite, whatever the case may be. And it gives you Infusion, which is give you 10% more lightning damage, which somehow affects the Ignite. I guess because a portion of our damage is coming from lightning. Not really sure, but it also takes make you take 10% less lightning damage. I believe it also affects physical. Yeah, because I believe it says 10% damage for the matching skill gem tag. So I don't know if we get like 10% from lightning spell or physical. It doesn't triple, guys. I'm not really sure how that works, but yeah, it's pretty good. The shield we're going to be using cast with damage taken. Flame Golem. You can either use Stone Golem for regen or Lightning Golem for cast speed with Tempest Shield. And then our helmet, which is Orazon, Malevolent, Summon Skitter Ball, Throw the Vash, and Lightens. And then the Spooter, which is on any piece of gear that has an open suffix. As for your bandits, you're basically killing all of them. It's up here on the top left. You know, kill all of them because the crit multi doesn't matter for Malaria. And then Pantheon, you want Branking. And then for your other one, you want Rislatha if you have enough Chaos Res, or Shikari if you don't have enough Chaos Res. You should have enough Chaos Res, so I recommend the Rislatha for the extra life recovery. Right, and that's pretty much the gist of that. And if I forgot to mention, the last ascendancy obviously is Bastion of Elements, is the only thing remaining, right? A little bubble that looks all too pretty. This pretty much covers that. And with that, guys, that pretty much covers the entire little mini build guide. It's still a pretty long video, but the case may be, there's a lot of information about the Elementalist, which I want you guys to know. To basically abuse the ignite damage is absolutely insane. And yes, I'll be making a crazy, you know, up to top build guide like I usually do for my complete build guides, and I'll showcase killing all the bosses, which is my goal for this build. In the meantime, while that's happening, I'll showcase some other league starting builds like my Gladiator Bleed EQ, which is still going, things like that. I have a pref rate, what is it, Savior Paradoxica, but you can still use Scavos perfectly fine, which has insane DPS with Scavos like 10 million with a pref rate, and it's Impale, really good as a Gladiator, so super tanky as well. Solid build. We also have Elemental hit build that I want to show you guys, so a lot of cool things coming up. So if you guys want to stick around, please make sure to subscribe and like the video, like I said earlier, if you enjoyed. And with that, guys, thanks so much for watching. And yeah, here's the bubbles that I was talking about earlier. Now for Bubbleception, we have the Elemental Aegis bubble. We have Malagara's Restraint for another bubble. We have the Aura Effect, Discipline for a third bubble. And then on top of that, the character effect, I have the Arctic character effect for another bubble. There's a fire version, but you can't stack them both. So I believe I have 4 bubbles on me at once, and I do not think there's another bubble I can put on. There you go. There's your quadruple Bubbleception. Hope you guys enjoyed.